Hi guys, and hopefully another fairly quick one today. And if you watched my previous video, you will have seen me taking apart a PlayStation 3 CECHL03. And what I want to do today is show you how to put it back together again. Now, what I did forget to mention in the previous video is when you take the PlayStation 3 apart, you will find that the heatsink and the CPU and GPU on the board here and here will be encrusted with gunk. And I did mention that I'd cleaned it, but you will need to have a good clean with it, and you want to use lint-free cloth and get some isopropyl alcohol and just give it a good old clean, ready for when you put the new thermal paste on. So first things first, what you want to do is put the heatsink in. And if you look here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 holes. And if you look here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 little lugs. And those holes and those lugs line up. And you just drop it in. There you go. Simple as that. Once you've done that, you want to put in your fan assembly. So, as I said in the previous video, there are a couple of little lugs, well, a couple of little cutouts, and they line up with these here. And if you just get those lined up and drop it in, and there's a hole there that drops into that one, and it will just drop into place. Once you've done that, you then get the back plate. And again, that should just drop in. Need to make sure you get it the right way. And there you go, it just drops in. And then you would take the 4 screws that you took out last time, those there, and they go in there, 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 and there. So let's do that now. These shouldn't be tight to go in initially. If they are, you're cross-threading, and you don't want to be doing that because it's all into plastic and you don't want to strip the plastic. You'll find things will wobble about if you do that. So just be gentle with it and try and make sure they go in nice and clean. And if you do that, you shouldn't run into any problems. And don't do it up too tight. Do it up until it starts to feel fairly stiff, and then just leave it be, because as I say, you don't want to be stripping the thread. And the last one. Right, so that's the heatsink and the fan housing and the back plate all fitted. Next thing you want to do is you want this one. And the way you orient that is, if you look here, where it's got this kind of H, that goes on the left. This is the front of the PlayStation, this is the back of the PlayStation, this is on the left hand side. And you can see here as well. And those are, can you see those? They're the little heat pads, the thermal pads, which I'm going to replace. So with this, you should just be able to drop it in the same way as you took it out. So if you put it in right, it'll just drop in, just drop into place. There you go. Right, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put on these new thermal pads. Because I don't want dirty, dusty ones. So they're a bit of a mess. Need to take plastic on them. Ooh. That's one. And that's two. And that should do it, hopefully, for the pads. Right, so next thing you're going to need to do, and this is going to be the awkward bit, is you're going to need to put some thermal paste on your chips. Make sure they're clean. Blowing on them probably isn't the best way of doing it. But with this, again, you need to make sure it goes in correctly. So, if this is the front of the PlayStation here, this needs to go in, and you would just drop it in. If you look, let me show you. This here just lines up here. So you would just go in from the front, just push it in, and you'll feel it go in, and you can just drop it down. And there's some little lugs, and they just push into the little lugs, one there and one there. Now, you want to be really careful doing that when you've actually got the thermal paste on, because if you move it about too much, the thermal paste is going to be messed with. So, let's make sure that we put the thermal paste on nice and cleanly, and that we fit the board nice and cleanly. So, I've got some Arctic silver here, and you want a piece about the size of a pin, the size of a pea, right in the centre. Should be about it. And again, you shouldn't need any more than that. And I've not done that perfectly because ideally you want to avoid air bubbles. But nevertheless, that should work a lot better than the previous gunk we had on there. So now, we turn this over. And as I say, you want to just line that, and you can feel it just clip in. And then you can just lower this down, and it should just sit into the lugs. And there you go. That is on. Right, so now the board's in place, you just want to take the top shield and put that in as well. So if you're leaving this attached like I did, you want to just thread that through first. Make sure it goes through nice and gently. Make sure there's no wire hanging out. And then you should just be able to, there's a little thing that sticks through there, and you should be able to line that up. And if you line that up, you can just drop that down. And there you go. That's that connected. So you would now need to put these on. Butterfingers today. And if you remember, they are those, and there's 4 of those. And you just want to put them on a little bit at a time. I'm going to do them up too tight initially. Make sure they go in properly. That one's not going in properly. It is now. As I say, you don't want to do them up tight initially. And do this one up now until it starts to feel a bit tighter. Same with the other side. Just so you can feel it start to be a little bit harder to do up. You don't want to do these up too tight anyway. You just want to make sure that they're tight enough. You'll actually know when they're done up tight because you'll feel it bite. And when you feel that happen, just stop. There you go. Yeah. That's enough. Now, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws. So we start here. We'll do this one up. And nope, went into the wrong one there. It's the ones with the arrows. If you look, I don't know if you can see on here, let me just lift this up. I don't know if you can see. There is just there's an arrow. You may be able to see it, you may not on the camera. But each of those holes have got a little arrow. And if you put the screws into the holes with the arrows, you'll be fine. If you're aware of this, because the way the PlayStation's made, when you push down here, it will tend to tip. So there's 4 along there. 1 here, just by these little connectors. The connector for the power supply and the Blu-ray drive. And there's a little arrow there as well, so you put that one in there. And then this one, the last one, last but not least, in here. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see that, the USBs are lined up, so you'll be able to plug them in and unplug them. But you shouldn't have any issue with getting that all lined up if you just drop it in correctly. Right, next thing, you want to put in the antenna, and as I showed when taking it apart, you just want to stick it the right hand side in first. You should be able to, and then just drop it in. It should just drop in. There you go. So there's that. And then we've got 3 screws. We've got that one there, and that one there. And these are slightly smaller than those. And as I say, if you kept them all together when you were taking it apart, you shouldn't have any issues. That one. And that one. And now the one to hold this in place. And now we want the big, I don't know if you can see that, the big screw with the washer for putting this one in place. Before we do that, I'm just going to plug into there, and we should be able to drop this in. He said famous last words. There you go. Right, there you go. So that's that. So next thing you want to do, once you've got all that in place, is you want to put the hard drive tray in. Don't forget to put that one in. And that just drops in there, and there should be 2 screws for that. As I say, 2 screws, and then the blue one for screwing the drive back in here. One. 2. And now you want to put the Blu-ray drive back in. So if you get the Blu-ray drive, make sure it's oriented properly. And if you remember, if you watched the teardown video that I did, this goes into here. So we need to make sure this little black lug, this little black clip is up. There you go, little black clip is up. And then gently, there's 2 little lugs either end, and you need to make sure the cable goes underneath them, which is not always easy. There you go. And then you want the line lining up with the lugs, and then once that's like that, you can just clip that down, and that's all lined up. So you should find that that will work perfectly. If it doesn't, don't blame me. And that should just sit on there, and then you can plug it back in. So that's that done, and there's no screws for that. So the next thing you'll need is the power supply. And the power supply has only one way it can go in as well. And if you look, there's the connector there and the connector there. So that pushes straight down into that. But before we do that, we just want to connect this connector to here. So that should just push straight in, and that's in. So then we sit that on there, and it should just push down, and that is in. Not sure that's in correctly. Yeah, it is in correctly. Good. Right, so now for that there should be some screws as well, and we've got 2 screws that go in here and here. Now there's 1, 2, 3, 4 holes, and you don't want the ones on the outside, you want the ones on the inside, just either side of the hard drive tray, which you can just about see poking out. Don't know if you can see it in the, there you go, the metal. You want the holes either side of the little metal piece there for the hard drive. And that is the longer screws. And as I say, if you've kept them all together, you shouldn't have any issues. So you just screw those in. Make sure you don't get them cross-threaded. one's actually quite... Ah, there you go. And the next one. Now that's better. Good. Right, so those are in. Now, we should have 3 more screws left. 2 longer ones and 1 shorter one. And the shorter one goes, where are we? Down in there. So the shorter one goes into the metal here. Can you see that? Just goes in there, and the longer one goes in there. Can you see that? And then the other longer one goes on the other side, which is here. So let's put the longer ones in first. One. Leave that in. Two. And then the little one. This is the tricky one. So, let's see if we can just... We're not going to drop it in like that, are we? So maybe I can drop it in using my little miniature pliers. Good luck with that. What you really need is a magnetic screwdriver, which I haven't got, unfortunately. So I can maybe... There you go. That should go in there now. Right. So that's that. Good. And one last thing you need to do there is you need to make sure you plug it in. Right. So that is all plugged in and ready to go now. Obviously it needs its case on. So the way you put the case back on is pretty much the way you took it off, in reverse. And you want to take the front of it and you want to just go find the front and just get it lined up correctly, and you'll see, because the line at the front will line up and there won't be much of a seam. And once that's done, you can just push it in place. And believe it or not, that's actually on, and you'd need to give it a little bit of force to get it off now. And now you can do the screws up. Now, if you remember, when you take it apart, there is an S on the back right hand corner, and that is for the smaller of the screws, and we've got 7, and this is the smallest one, and that one goes there. So we'll put that one in first. And then we want one there, one there, one there, and they've all got little marks to show, little arrows to show where they go. One there. One there. And one there. Just do those all up. Don't over tighten them. As I keep saying, most of these screws go into plastic, so if you over tighten them, you're not going to actually make them any tighter, you're just going to strip the threads. That one's done up already. Done. Right, and the next thing you would put on the top. Now, if you watched my teardown video, you'll see that mine is actually broken. So where the screw is, I don't actually need to take the screw out because it's broken off. But normally you would just take this lug out, and it would have already been taken out when you took it apart. But once you've got the screw out with the lug, you would just drop that on the top, slide it along, put the screw back in, and that's a Torx 10 bit that you need. Screw that back in, that would hold it in place. And then put your little lug on top. Obviously you'd have to remove the sticker, but that shouldn't be an issue. And then last thing you need to do is you get your hard drive, and the little blue screw, and then you would just take the hard drive, take this, slide it in, drop that back in place, screw the screw in, and wrong way round, drop it in there, and just push it down, and you're done. One finished PS3, hopefully ready to use. Although, as I said in my previous video, I think I need to do some work with the Blu-ray drive. But other than that, it should work perfectly. Right, that's me done. I will speak to you in the next one. Hopefully that was some use to somebody. As I said in the previous video, this is specific to the CECHL03 PlayStation 3. And other PlayStation 3s, the fat models will vary somewhat from this. And obviously the slim models are going to vary a hell of a lot more. But if you've got the CECHL03 or a similar model, this may be some use to you. And hopefully it is. And as I say, I'll speak to you in the next one. And in the meantime, I'm going to go and get myself a cup of tea. Bye.